Hi there, thanks for tuning in. Today we are going to look at different methods of tie-dyeing. We're going to show you 3 different methods that you can do at home. First one we're going to do is using Tulip one-step tie-dye that you can buy at any craft store or Target or Walmart. Before we get started, make sure you have your workspace prepared. As you can see, I've covered our table. I have a drop cloth on the floor. I'm wearing an apron so I don't get splatter all over my shirt, because it says dye and it will stain your clothing, so make sure you're either wearing something old that you don't care about or cover it up like I'm doing. If you're using store-bought dye, go ahead and prepare your dye as I've done already. Follow the directions in the packaging. We're using Tulip Dye, as I said. You also need something to dye. I'm going to be using my plain white face mask that I wear at work. You will also need gloves, some rubber bands, and a plastic bag to keep your project in overnight while it sets. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing you'll want to do is prepare your fabric for dyeing. Make sure you've washed and dried it before you start. There's different ways you can prepare your fabric for dyeing. You can fold it, twist it, or roll it. If you want to do more of a spiral pattern, you can pinch the middle and twist it. And if you want to do that, get it set the way you want it, and then use your rubber bands to secure it. So once you've got it ready, fold it up or scrunched up and secured. You'll want to be working in the sink in your kitchen or utility room, or like I've got a little tub that I don't mind getting all stained. So let's go ahead and put our gloves on. Let's grab one of our dyes. I'm just going to stick the nozzle right up to the fabric. You want it to soak all the way through. I'm only using 2 colors, but you can use as many colors as you'd like. You can use your rubber bands as a guide to separate the sections you want to dye. Sometimes you get a little spurt like that. You want to make sure you soak the fabric all the way through. I'm using turquoise and fuchsia for this project. And again, you want to use enough dye to soak all the way through all the layers of the fabric. Okay, when you feel like it's soaked enough, go ahead and place it in your plastic bag. Seal it up and put it off to the side and let that set. We're going to leave this overnight, and we'll come back to it in the morning to finish it up. We're back a couple days later, ready to finish up our 2 tie-dyes. As you can see, my hair is a lot shorter. Got a haircut over the weekend, so we're ready to take these out. Okay, we're going to start with our store-bought dye that we used, our Tulip one-step dye. We're going to take it out of the bag into our tub. We are going to carefully remove all of the rubber bands and try not to splatter, because there's still active dye in here. Okay, you can see all that red and blue dye came together in some spots and made purple. Made a nice little pattern. We're gonna set this off to the side and we'll take it over to the sink and give it a rinse and a hand wash. Okay, so we've moved over to the sink to finish up our first tie-dye project, the one with the Tulip store-bought dye. As I said, this is a one-step dye, so we didn't have to do any special finishing. I'm going to just rinse it out to get all of the active dye out that I can. Then I'm going to give it a quick little hand wash. If you're doing this at home, you can throw it into your machine and wash it on gentle and low heat dry to finish it up. Make sure you do that by itself if you do throw it in the machine. Otherwise, it might stain some of your other clothes. A lot of dye is going to come out. We're going to keep rinsing it until the water runs clear and as much of the dye is out as we can get. Keep squeezing it, wringing it out, whatever you need to do. As much of the dye out as I can, and now I'm going to give it just a quick hand wash. Again, you can do this in your machine at home, following the directions that is in your dye. I've rinsed it out real well, and I'm just going to lay this out to air dry. If you're doing it at home, put it in your tumble dry on low. I'll probably take it home and give it a good wash before I attempt to wear it, but we're going to leave it to air dry and come back later and see what our results look like. Here's our final result with our store-bought dye, and here are just a few more examples to show some of the different results you might get. Here is a handkerchief with store-bought dye. Okay, for our next method, we're going to use food coloring to tie-dye. You may have food coloring already in your pantry, or it might be cheaper for you to get than the ready-made dye. So the only difference is we're going to have to do a little more work to make the food coloring set. You'll need bottles for your dye, food coloring. I'm using gel coloring, but any over-the-counter food coloring you can get at your grocery store should work. You also need vinegar and salt. Again, I'm going to be dyeing one of my masks. It's been washed and dried, but in order to make the food coloring set, we're going to have to pre-treat it. Before, with the Tulip Dye, we were able to just go straight into dyeing. This one, we're going to start with giving it a salt bath. I've got about a cup of water here in this. We're going to soak it in there, and then I'm just going to sprinkle on some salt. You don't have to worry about measuring it. We're going to give it a nice little salt bath. This will help the food coloring set as dye. Alright, so when it's soaked up in the salt water, we're going to take it out. We're going to put it into the next one. We're going to let it soak in water and vinegar. This will also help the dye to set. You want to let that set for about 30 minutes. While that is setting, we can move over and prepare our dye. So you need about 4 ounces worth of water. I didn't bother measuring, I just eyeballed it. And take your food coloring and add 10 to 15 drops, depending on how vibrant you want the colors to be. Seal it and shake it up. This color is flashy pink. And the other color is brilliant blue. I picked ones that were close to the Tulip Dye so we can compare when we Once your dyes are ready and your fabric has soaked for 30 minutes at least, pull it out of the vinegar water. Give it a nice wring out. We don't want to rinse it or let it dry out. We're going to do this one while it's still wet with the vinegar. And again, you can fold it, scrunch it up, twist it, whatever you feel like doing. You're going to fold it and twist it. And secure it with rubber bands. Place it in your sink or your tub for dyeing. Just like we did before, we're going to take one dye at a time. Apply it to the fabric. Make sure it soaks all the way through. Again, I like to use the rubber bands as a guide to dyeing the different sections. Alright, and when you're satisfied that you've soaked your dye enough, this one will be a little more runny than the other one. When you soaked it enough, and again, put it in your Ziploc bag. Leave it aside for a day to set. We'll come back to this one tomorrow and finish it up. Hi, we're back a couple days later, ready to finish up our 2 tie dyes. Okay, next we're going to finish up our food coloring dye. This one's a little different. With the Tulip Dye, it's a one-step dye, so we didn't have to do any special finishing. But this one, we're going to have to do a little more work to make sure that the dye sticks. So let's go ahead and take it out and remove the rubber bands. Again, try not to splatter. If it's easier to cut them off, that could work too, unless you want to save your rubber bands. And this one, we're going to start with giving it another quick salt bath like we did when we started. Put it in a little tub of water, sprinkle some salt in there. A lot of this dye is going to seep out, and that's fine. We want to hit it with salt to try to set that dye in. Give it another little quick soak with some vinegar. And hopefully, the salt and vinegar bath will help it keep more of this color when we go rinse it out. There we go. Got it. Some good colors going there. All right, we're gonna take this over to the sink and rinse it out and see what we get. And here are our final results of our tie-dye projects with food coloring dye made at home. And here are more examples of food color dye. All right, our last method we're going to show you is good for doing dark colors like my navy blue mask here. This is best if you have something really dark like blacks or blues. We're going to use bleach to tie-dye these because these won't take dye like a white cotton mask will. So I've got my little cup of water here. We're not going to use a lot of bleach at all. I'm just going to open this up and pour just a tiny little drop in there. That should be enough. And when you're using bleach, make sure you're observing all the safety you need to. Wear your gloves the whole time you're using bleach. Cover up your clothes. Make sure you have your table covered because the bleach will mess up your clothes, your table, your kitchen counters, or whatever. So we've got our bleach, our diluted bleach ready to go over here. I'm going to go ahead and prep my mask like we did with the other ones. Roll it. And you can do whatever you want with your fabric. You can scrunch it up or twist it. I'm just going to roll it, maybe fold it over, secure it with the rubber bands. In our tub. If you're doing this at home, you'll definitely want to do this one in a tub or a bucket, not in your sink. I'm ready to apply my bleach. Have it diluted in water. I'm using a little medicine dropper. If you don't have one of those, you can put it in a little squirt bottle or something. You want to try to not let it splatter. I'm using this so I can control. So as soon as the bleach is applied, it's going to start reacting, and in just a minute or so, you're going to start seeing the colors change. Okay, it's been about 6 or 7 minutes. We had to add a little more bleach to it because our reaction wasn't happening fast enough. You can always add a little more if it's not working for you. As you can see, it started to discolor. So now we want to finish this up by stopping the bleach reaction. So I'm going to take it over to our sink and give it a good rinse and give it a little hand wash. If you're at home and you want to rinse it out and throw it in the washing machine, that's fine, but make sure you do it by itself with nothing else so that it doesn't damage any of your other clothes. And here are our final results of our tie-dye projects. It came out a little something like this. It brought out a lot of red hues. So depending on the shade of your dark material that you're bleaching, it'll bring out some different colors. It'll look something like that. Here's our final result with our store-bought dye, with our DIY food color dye, and with our bleach. And here are just a few more examples to show some of the different results you might get. Here is a handkerchief with store-bought dye. And here are more examples of food color dye. Thanks for checking out our DIY tie-dye project. If you do any of these at home, please share your results with us on our Facebook page.